Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 26 series, Rescue the Rockies. And the 2032 to 33 offseason is about to get underway. Our Rockies were the defending World Series champions here in 2032, had an historically awesome regular season, ranking in all of baseball first in runs scored and first in team ERA. 116 win season, tied for the most wins ever in a major league regular season. And then unfortunately, we flamed out in the playoffs in 4 games, losing 3 out of 4 in the National League Division Series against our division rival Los Angeles Dodgers, who we topped by 26 games in the regular season. So fantastic regular season, followed up by an extremely disappointing postseason. In this episode, we're going to do our annual roster review as we start planning for this offseason. Mentioned the 116 and 46 record. That was 5 better than expectations. Did not have a losing month in the regular season all year, and actually, even though we were only 1-3 in the playoffs, still had a winning record in October. Our worst months of the year, we had a winning percentage over 600 in both June and July. We were 16-10 in both of those months, and that was as bad as this team did. So clearly a very successful regular season. As I mentioned, we were first in all of baseball in runs scored, which meant, of course, we're first in the National League. And you can see first, second, or third in almost all of the primary hitting categories. Pitching, perhaps even better, first in the league in runs allowed, and we ranked first in almost every primary pitching category, the exceptions being BABIP and walks, where we ranked second and tied for second respectively. And we were a slightly above average defensive team. So just about everything that could go right on the field with this team during the regular season did go right, before obviously things went the wrong way in the postseason. We'll start off taking a look at our outstanding pitching staff, and certainly things start with our starting rotation. The good news is that I think we're likely, if we want, to be returning our entire rotation next year. Noah Schultz was a huge free agent signing for us this past offseason. All he did for us was go 17-2 with a league best 2.48 ERA, 0.91 WHIP, and 2/3 of his starts were quality starts. Put up a 5.6 WAR for us. Did have a couple of minor injuries, and his injury proneness has flipped to fragile. Still going to be making $45 million a year for these next 2 seasons before he can potentially opt out. But the 2-time Cy Young Award winner and 4-time All-Star will only be 29 years old next year, and still expect him to be one of the top pitchers in baseball as long as he's healthy. Can probably say the same thing about Leo Martinez, scouting discovery, who we've gotten very lucky with, has come up through our organization, and in his first full year in the majors this year, 16-6 record with a 2.57 ERA, over 200 strikeouts, similar to Schultz, and a league best 0.6 homers per 9 innings, put up a 6.1 WAR for us. He's a guy who we signed to a long extension before he had ever thrown a major league pitch, and it seems like if he remains healthy, that will be a very good decision by our front office. Number 3 starter Dylan Jordan, traded for him this past offseason. He's starting to hit more expensive arbitration years, expected to make about $9 million next year. But after an outstanding first season in Colorado, where he led the league with 18 wins, with a 2.83 ERA, and another guy with over 200 strikeouts and a WAR of over 5, certainly expect him to once again be a big contributor next year. Andrew Painter's results have been a little more volatile year to year for us. Nice solid season for him as our fourth starter this past year, though. 12-10 record with an ERA of just over 4. Put up a 2.9 WAR on the season. Certainly a capable and competent back of the rotation type starter. And you can say the same thing about Isaiah Shader, former 6th round pick from our first draft in 2025. 10-7 record this year with a 4.60 ERA. Only a 1.2 WAR. Was definitely a down year for him. But as a potential 5th starter, he's not going to be making a ton of money yet. Set to make about $4 million next year, and would expect that unless we somehow get very lucky in the trade market, he will probably be our 5th starter coming out of spring training, because we're not really going to have any money to add any substantive players this upcoming offseason. So I feel pretty comfortable about our rotation, and I actually feel very comfortable about our late inning relievers. It's kind of those bridge guys. If we have a starter who doesn't do that well or only gives us 5 innings, kind of those 5th, 6th, 7th inning guys are the place where I think we have some weaknesses, because Wellington Herrera likely will be back as our closer next year, although depending on how many left-handed arms we have, might be able to use him in a different role to get a little more matchup-centric play out of him. But very strong season for him. 7-5 record with 43 saves, outstanding shutdown to meltdown numbers of 37-6 respectively. Put up a 2.72 ERA across 76 innings pitched and a 2.3 WAR. He's still signed for another few seasons, making $5 million next year in his age 29 season, so he'll be back. Normally wouldn't think of moving someone who's been that successful out of the closer role, but we do have Justin Gibson heading into his first arbitration year, only set to make about $2.9 million, and he's coming off of another very strong season. Led the league with 70 games, led the league in holds for the second straight year with 25, 6-5 record with 3 saves, 112 strikeouts in just 83 1/3 innings pitched, 3.46 ERA and a 2.8 WAR. Could certainly make him a closer next year if we wanted to have perhaps a little more opportunity to use Herrera creatively in the middle to late innings, focused more on facing left-handed pitchers. But certainly there is an argument, if it's not broken, no need to fix it. Keep Herrera in as our closer and have Gibson be a stopper/setup man for us again. Bill Douglas, 26-year-old who we picked up in a trade with the Mets almost 3 years ago at this point. 4-1 record with a 3.26 ERA, struck out 70 batters over 58 innings. Don't necessarily see him being a big-time part of our future, but he's making the major league minimum, and he is a guy who still has 3 option years available. So at this point would certainly expect him to be in the mix as a right-handed reliever out of our pen. Can say the same thing about Ryan Featherston, 3.56 ERA over 43 innings pitched. Another guy making the major league minimum, still has option years left. Would love it if the likes of Douglas and Featherston can end up more in middle relief roles than setup roles, but think they could both be contributors. Kumar Rocker was making the major league minimum this year when we signed him to a minor league contract at the start of the season. He is looking for bigger money now, but only $4.5 million a year for 3 years. So I think he's a little more realistic about where he is in his career. Had a fine year, 3.61 ERA for us over 72 1/3 innings pitched, but he was basically a replacement level pitcher when all was said and done. Did allow 13 home runs in those 72 1/3 innings, so wasn't incredibly efficient at keeping the ball in the park. Tend to think he could be gone. And Braden Nett probably also finally going to be gone. Guy we picked up in the very early stages of this playthrough back on May 19th, 2025. Started 5 games for us this year, pitched 31 overall, 5-3 record with a 4.14 ERA in the 82 2/3 innings that he pitched. He's looking for $13 million a year over the next 3 years, though, and Painter and Shader are arguably better than Net. I think they're all relatively similar pitchers, and we can have those two on board for much less money than it would take to bring Braid and Net back. So tend to think he's probably thrown his last pitches in a Rockies uniform. James Embry, former second-round pick, put up a 5.53 ERA over 17 games pitched out of the bullpen. With his profile, don't view him as a big part of our future. Recently turned 26 years old, making the major league minimum. Still has 2 option years left. I think there's probably an argument to just release him off of the 40-man roster so we don't even have to guarantee him a major league contract. But those are the types of decisions that we'll be making in the coming weeks. Similar profile for Jack Bauer, another former second-round pick. He had a 0 ERA over 5 relief appearances late in the year for us, but an ERA of close to 7 or over 7 the last 3 years in AAA. Certainly don't think that Bauer is a big-time prospect at this point, but he's got option years left, making the major league minimum. So when we think about the bullpen, there's definitely some room for some help. Herrera and Gibson's roles are very secure, and we're very happy to have them. Douglas and Featherston right now probably make the team. Rocker and Net probably going away. Embry and Bauer right now would likely be on the roster, although in a perfect world, we'd prefer to have them in AAA. Now, one positive thing for us is that we do have several injured pitchers that we haven't talked about yet. Ian Miller missed the entire year, but the former 8th-round pick looks like he could be a long reliever out of the bullpen for us, and potentially a guy who could start if one of the 5 starters that we mentioned has some injury issues. Did not allow a run in the 5 innings that he pitched for us before his that was actually last year in 2031. Tore the flexor tendon in his elbow this year when we were hoping he'd be up with the big team the whole season. He's already fragile in terms of his injury proneness. Who knows what he's going to look like in about a month when he's healthy again. But tend to think, given the dearth of pitchers we have in our bullpen right now, that Mr. Miller, who's making the major league minimum, obviously, and has options left, will be on the 26-man roster coming out of spring training. Luke Little is a more difficult decision. Right now, only potentially 2 left-handers on the team, our closer or proposed closer Herrera and our number 1 starter in Schultz. So we could definitely use some other left-handed arms. Little was very effective this year with a 2.44 ERA over 55 1/3 innings pitched, but ended up having elbow inflammation right at the end of the season, missed the playoffs. Got a team option for $7 million for him next year. Don't love his control, but his stuff and his movement are both good. Extreme ground ball tendencies play well, given that we still have pretty solid defense up the middle of our infield. $7 million is getting, in my mind, fully priced for a 32-year-old left-handed reliever who's not likely to be our closer. But when you look at what the free agent pitchers tend to go for in this game, might make sense to bring him back. Another potential lefty is Dave Seibrecht. He was a Rule 5 pick of ours a year ago. Pitched very briefly, no runs allowed over 2 1/3 innings before he tore his rotator cuff and missed the entire season. Fragile physically, but he's a guy who looks like he could be a useful left-handed arm out of the bullpen for us next year. Unfortunately, he's not someone who's really any more effective against lefties than righties. But given that we are light on the left-handed pitching, particularly if we move on from Little Seibrecht, if he's healthy and well, could be in the mix. Another lefty, Drew Summers, similar to Little, we've got a team option on him. The dollar amount, $1.7 million, a lot more reasonable. But Summers, 32 years old, his stuff is now below average. Did have a nice year for us before he got hurt. 2.68 ERA over 37 innings pitched. But that torn triceps the day after the trade deadline kind of began a spiral for us of a lot of injuries, particularly in our bullpen over those final couple months of the season. Tough decisions on these lefties to me. Little is certainly more talented than Summers, but he's also a lot more expensive than Summers. Seibrecht, I think likely makes the team unless he comes back with a real serious injury situation. He's making the major league minimum. He's got option years left, although I think he's still got a lot of active Rule 5 days left. So we're going to have to likely keep him on the roster coming out of spring training. So I think probably pencil in Seibrecht as a second lefty out of our bullpen. Miller, potential swingman who could start or relieve for us. And then the question is, what do we want to do with the Luke Little and Drew Summers option years? And the injury late in the season that really broke my heart and was a big blow in our attempt to repeat was losing Pex Neves to a broken kneecap back on September 10th. He hit .269 with 33 homers and 91 ribbies in the 136 games he played before his season came to an end. 2.8 WAR on the season, 136 WRC plus. So a very productive player heading into the 6th and 7th years of that contract we signed him to when he came to the majors from Cuba 5 years ago, set to make $31 million. And given that he's still injured at this point, no real option to trade him over these coming couple of months through the winter meetings. So probably kind of need to, for the foreseeable future, view him as a corner outfield / DH type for us next year. He is durable in terms of his injury proneness. The broken knee, just one of those things that happens on a given play and can happen to anybody, but still think that he'll be a very productive offensive player and likely our cleanup hitter once again in 2033. And after talking about Pex Neves, we'll now turn to the healthy position players on our team. And mentioned with our pitching, starters kind of are what they're going to be, and we'll have a lot of arms back in the bullpen, but likely we'll need to add 2 or 3 arms over the course of the offseason to hopefully help bolster our bullpen. Kind of in a somewhat similar situation as far as the position players. We can afford to bring back just about everybody, but we're not going to really be adding much talent. Given how good this team was last year, I think that's probably the path that we'll end up following. Start off with our catchers. Chris Boone, the backup catcher, is a guy that we could look to upgrade. Boone does have 2 option years left, and he's making the major league minimum. But he hit just .214 in 131 at-bats for us, 55 WRC plus. Still was slightly above replacement level, as he's a good, solid defensive catcher. Would love a backup catcher who's as good defensively at Boone, who can actually hit a little bit. But given the financial situation we're likely to be in, I think it's very conceivable that Boone could end up being the backup to Drew Romo next year. Romo, in terms of his ratings and his performance on the field, is finally starting to have the years and the wear and tear catch up to him. He'll be turning 32 next season. We've got him for $12 million next year, and then a team option for $12 million after that. Still a premier defensive catcher and a great influence in the clubhouse with that captain personality. But the bat is definitely trending negatively. Hit just 234 this past season, only 3 home runs and 441 at-bats, and looks like the power is largely gone. Put up a 2.3 WAR for us, but only a 69 WRC plus. Given his outstanding defense and influence in the clubhouse, as well as his extreme popularity, odds are he will be back with us next year. But it's not inconceivable that 2033 could be Romo's last year with the Rockies. Matt McElroy was the right-handed hitting portion of our first base platoon this past season. Ended up putting a 104 WRC plus up, half a win above replacement level, 241 average, but he did have 15 homers and 43 ribbies and 220 at-bats. The left-handed hitting McElroy is a useful bat against left-handed pitching. Doesn't bring much, but a little bit of pop against right-handed pitching. He's still making the major league minimum. Still his options. Likely will be a utility player for us and possibly in a platoon at first base with Ryan Stone. Would love to get Ryan Stone into the outfield at some point. But given the number of outfielders we have, he still could end up a first baseman again next year. Followed up a outstanding first full season in the majors with one that was arguably even better this year. Although his batting average dropped to 281, he did have 30 home runs for the first time, drove in 90 runs, scored 104. 133 WRC plus and 3.3 WAR were both slightly above where he was a year ago. He is a very platoon-heavy player, a monster against right-handed pitching, pretty useless against left-handed pitching, and we certainly saw that in his splits this year with a 141 WRC plus against righties and a sickly -9 WRC plus against lefties. Fortunately, having McElroy on the team, Stone only had to face left-handed pitching 32 times last year, so the two of them combined to be a pretty productive platoon because McElroy is basically the opposite of Stone. He was an above-average offensive player with a 106 WRC plus against lefties, below average against righties with a 98 WRC plus. Obviously not as extreme in terms of his splits as Stone. Very few players in the history of Major League Baseball have had as extreme splits as Mr. Stone does, but the two of them were a pretty effective platoon for us at first base. Rosnil DePaula, who made his Major League debut for us this year, probably going to be an important utility infielder for us next year. He can play second, third, or short. He hit 315 in 127 Major League at-bats. Also put up a 129 WRC plus, almost a win above replacement. Don't know that we necessarily have a starting spot for him, but with some of our key middle infielders being older and or injury prone, I think it's definitely conceivable that DePaula could be an everyday player for us against left-handed pitching and potentially get 300 to 400 at-bats due to some injuries that will likely incur over the course of the season. Gavin Lux was an important utility infielder for us this year. Picked him up in a trade with Arizona. He is looking for $7.5 million a year for 2 years. Hit 242 for us and 231 at-bats, given that we've got DePaula on board and he's 10 years younger and cheaper than Lux and also very popular and arguably better. I think DePaula is likely a key infielder for us next year, and we probably move on from Lux. One of the reasons we think DePaula could get some playing time is that Meyer is going to be 30 next year. He's already fragile physically. .261 average with 33 doubles, 11 homers, 20 stolen bases for us this year. Another healthy season for him where he played 150 games. Slightly below average offensive player offensively, but still put up a 2.5 WAR. A good and versatile fielder. He's heading into his final arbitration year, set to make about $10.5 million. I think we probably bring Meyer back for a final season with us. One guy we won't be bringing back is Cole Carrig. We've brought him back each of the last 2 years, signing him to increasingly expensive arbitration contracts. Only 78 Major League at-bats a year ago, and only 12 Major League at-bats this past year. He is popular locally and a fan favorite, as I noted, but his arbitration number next year is set to be $6 million. Tend to think that although Carrig is very versatile, he's on the wrong side of 30 now, set to make a ton of money for a guy who hasn't been able to make our 26-man roster out of spring training the last couple years. Probably better things that we could do with the $6 million that he's due. Interesting decision on Colt Keith, $10 million team option for him for next year. He didn't have the most productive first season in Colorado, was basically a league average offensive player, 241 average. He did have 20 homers and 88 ribbies, so he was productive, typically as a fifth or sixth hitter in the lineup for us, put up a 1.7 WAR, a good, respectable, solid season. Given that I don't think that Derby Mahez is quite ready to take over third base next year. Mahez certainly has the glove. Just don't know that his bat is going to be ready. I think we lean towards bringing Colt Keith back next year, but he is definitely a year-to-year decision for us. And last but certainly not least among our infielders, the veteran shortstop Ezekiel Tovar, 31 years old now, fragile physically, still has 4 years left on the 5-year extension we signed him to, making $23.2 million a year, although the final year of that contract is a player option. Captain personality, great in the clubhouse, good speed, the defense is still there. The bat is definitely not what it once was, but he still had a very productive season for us. 294 average, 34 doubles, 19 home runs, stole 22 bases. All in all, put up a 118 WRC plus and a 4.7 WAR. He doesn't appear, after missing all of 2030 with an injury, to be the guy who was putting up 5.5, 6, 6.5, 7 WAR seasons for us the previous 4 years. But he still looks like a 4, 4.5 kind of WAR guy. And if he can continue to produce at that level for us for the next couple seasons, I think that it'll be money well spent. And he certainly will continue to anchor our infield defense with his outstanding range at shortstop. So don't necessarily feel like there's a ton we need to do in the infield. Don't necessarily feel like there's a ton we need to do at catcher, although could upgrade from Boone. And we've already talked about Nieves, and there's 6 other major league quality outfielders that we're going to be talking about. So this remains probably a position of strength for us. If we could trade an outfielder or two for some bullpen help this offseason, that could be a path to clear up a bit of a logjam. Christian Arguelles is going to be an interesting decision for us. The 25-year-old split the year between AAA and the majors, hit just a .176 in the majors this year, although admittedly he only had 102 at-bats for us. The left-hander still looks like a useful hitter against right-handed pitching. Like his ability to play multiple outfield positions, he's got decent speed. The issue is that he's going to be out of options and could be a player who, because of that, maybe we look to monetize in terms of a trade just to give ourselves a little more flexibility going forward, maybe bring on a young bullpen arm. And there's no guarantee, as I said, that Arguelles will make the 26-man roster. Part of the reason that's in question is that we've got another left-handed hitter who is much more potentially effective against right-handed pitching, durable physically, not as good defensively as Arguelles, and not as good in terms of the speed. And that's Ted Miller, the 23-year-old who was a second-round pick of ours in 2027. The positives from his rookie year: hit 20 homers, drove in 76 runs, and walked 83 times. The negatives: the batting average just 237, struck out 128 times. And as I noted, it all added up to basically being a league average offensive player and only a little bit above replacement level, given that he spent a fair amount of time at DH for us, and he's also not a particularly talented corner outfielder or first baseman defensively. But given that he's making the major league minimum, and we think he can potentially continue to improve his hitting proficiency against right-handed batters in particular, Miller probably going to be on the roster next year as a corner outfield DH type for us. Dean West, another guy whose future is a little less certain. He's set to make a little over $2 million in arbitration. Love the speed, love the glove. The bat with him is the question. The 80 WRC plus he put up this year and the 1.9 WAR he put up were the best of his career. Not a particularly great offensive player with that 235 batting average, 9 home runs on the year. But he's stolen over 20 bases for us 3 straight years with a very high success rate. The price tag is not that high, and he is a talented defensive outfielder who has been an above-average center fielder for us defensively the last few seasons. I think that West probably makes the roster next year. And honestly, assuming that we want to avoid a little bit of wear and tear on Kevin Roberts Jr., right now probably is our starting center fielder. Trent Clausen is kind of the right-handed version of Christian Arguelles in terms of he could end up making the team. He could be a guy that we end up trading away, the former first-round pick out of Oregon State. Not as productive in his second major league season as he was in his first. The batting average dipped to 215, only 5 home runs and 200 at-bats, 91 WRC plus, was still above replacement level. He's a versatile outfielder, can play all 3 positions competently to well, like the speed, although he only stole 11 bases for us this year. But really is kind of the right-handed version of Ryan Stone. Pretty effective bat against left-handed pitching, but really does not bring much at all to the table against righties. And saw that in his statistics this past year. Was an above-average offensive player against lefties, but a really ugly, particularly for an outfielder, 51 WRC plus against right-handed pitching. So it's hard to imagine a scenario where both Arguelles and Clausen are back on the team next year. Might come down to whoever's got more trade value. Sam Gray, right-handed hitter, 23-year-old former third-round pick out of that 2027 draft, hit 264 with 31 doubles, 9 triples, and 9 home runs in AAA for us. Was 1 for 11 in the majors at the end of the season. But another guy who is competent at all of the outfield positions, good influence in the clubhouse, decent speed. The question with him is really his bat. He's not going to draw a ton of walks, not going to hit many home runs, and he's another guy who definitely has splits that indicate he's potentially more of a platoon guy at the major league level, perhaps focused on facing off against left-handed pitching. So pretty hard to envision a scenario where both Clausen and Gray make the team. So I would think when we think about guys like Arguelles, Clausen, and Gray, only one or two of them will ultimately make the team. We've talked about Ted Miller's going to likely be on the team. Dean West probably is on the team. Gus Nieves is going to be on the team. And then Kevin Roberts Jr. certainly will be on the team. Definitely the most successful decision we've made in any of the drafts we've played thus far with the Rockies. Picked him 5th overall in 2026, and he has blossomed into a monster. Led the National League this past year with 118 runs scored, 51 doubles, and 130 runs batted in. Also 51 homers and 130 runs batted in. Had 34 doubles, 17 steals, up to the batting average to 265, slugging percentage of close to 600, a 144 WRC plus, and a 6.2 WAR. He's a guy who can play any position in the outfield at a pretty high level. If we did move on from West, Roberts Jr. would presumably be our center fielder, but probably in a perfect world would like to have him in right or left to put a little more, less wear and tear on his legs, and hopefully just let that bat be our likely number 3 hitter for hopefully the next decade or so. So Roberts Jr., a critically important player for us, and was great to see him have a ton of success this year in his sophomore season after a rookie year that was a little bit disappointing given the expectations that we had for him last year. So before we finish things off, we're going to check the trade markets on a few guys. I don't really anticipate there's going to be much, if any, market for Cole Carrig. But again, given that he's set to be making about $6 million next year, and he hasn't made our 26-man roster out of spring training either of these past couple of years, if we could get anything for him, we certainly would take advantage of it. Unfortunately, it looks like no one's interested in Carrig at that price tag. Can't blame him. Unfortunately, we won't get anything for him. But fortunately, if we get that $6 million off the books, that puts us in a situation where we can start getting scouting and player development, hopefully back up towards where we'd like them to be going forward. Hopefully there won't be too much of a fan interest hit when we do inevitably move on from Mr. Carrig. As I mentioned, Jordan definitely will be back with us. Shader almost certainly will be back with us. Justin Gibson definitely will be back with us. Marcelo Meyer almost certainly will be back with us. Dean West almost certainly will be back with us. So the only guy we're looking to move on from is Cole Carrig, and we're going to put the $0 team offer in there now just so we don't forget about anything. If there's a way we can trade him and get some small amount of value in the coming weeks, we will, but not anticipating it. Our only pending free agents where we could potentially give QOs to are Braden Nett and Kumar Rocker. Certainly not going to do that with either of them. Gavin Lux, as we've talked about, is also unlikely to be back with us next season. And we'll check in now on a potential trade for a guy who's been one of our more disappointing first-round picks. The infielder Matt Waters, who we picked 24th overall 3 years ago, hasn't made it out of rookie ball yet, and honestly, he wasn't even a regular starter for us this year. The bat is just not good. Think the glove is still decent, but the bat is so bad that he's never going to be a major leaguer. He is one of these guys that, for whatever reason, the OSA is still pretty high on. So last episode we saw that Waters was still ranked among the top 200 prospects in baseball. Unfortunately for us, I don't think that the teams place much value on what the OSA thinks, and I'm guessing that their general managers have a more similar opinion to ours. So my hunch is that when we shop Matt Waters, there's going to be nobody at all interested in him, and you can see as expected, no one offers anyone for Matt Waters for us. This has been a trend. Definitely last off season, and it might even be the past two off seasons at this point. We saw him spiraling very quickly after we signed him and brought him on board. But unfortunately, it seems like most of the other GMs have felt similarly in their evaluations for him, and he's gone from being a first-round pick to essentially having no value in about 12 to 18 months. And now we're about 3.5 years into his career, but it doesn't look like there's any prospect for us to extract much, if any, value from Mr. Waters going forward. And I did get feedback that somehow I skipped over Matt Stream when we were talking about prospects on other teams last episode, so apologize for doing that. Stream, the 19-year-old left-hander, was picked 41st overall a year ago. 2-1 with a 2.78 ERA in rookie ball, and then 1-0 with a 2.08 ERA when he was promoted to A ball as a 19-year-old. So the young left-hander still certainly looks like he could become a very high-level major league pitcher if he reaches his full potential. And I'll also, just to share some of the options and actually find out some of the potential options with the worldwide scouting department as I'm talking about it, shop a couple of the outfielders whose spots could be in jeopardy next year. Christian Arguelles, we talked about, no longer going to have options. There are options to trade him. Doesn't necessarily look like there's anyone who's going to be incredibly interesting, although we need some relievers. And Manuel Garcia, he would be a pretty interesting right-hander to bring on board given the situation in our bullpen if it were not for the extreme fly ball tendencies, his inability to keep the ball in the ballpark, and the fact that he'd be pitching half of his games in cores. Looks like the Red Sox actually have a fair amount of interest. Jason DeCaro, a name that will be familiar to some of you who have followed us in previous years, former first-round pick. Another fly ball pitcher, a little better keeping the ball in the park and not as extreme tendencies, good personality. 26-year-old is already fragile physically, didn't have a particularly good year for the Red Sox last year, but as a long reliever out of the bullpen, could be interesting. Sebastian Blanco is also an interesting infield option. Not incredible defensively, but he can play a lot of positions. Right-handed batter. Looks almost like a cheaper version of Cole Carrig. Not as good defensively as Cole Carrig, but probably a little bit better of a bat than Cole Carrig, and also a guy with a pretty good personality. Ilan Fernandez, second baseman, a little better defensively. Another right-handed hitting infielder. Not a ton of pop in the bat, but looks like a decent contact hitter. He's been reasonably useful major leaguer the last 3 years for Boston. So there are options out there if we decide to move on from Mr. Arguelles. Alvi Pena, probably a bit of mirage, a 26-year-old, hard to imagine him improving all of this untapped potential that our scout thinks he has. But if we could hurt the Dodgers, certainly could be someone to bring on board. Jeremy Miller with the Twins. Ramon Lopez, young reliever. Don't love the lack of control, but the stuff is good. Decent movement on his pitches. He's durable. He's young. Didn't have a great major league debut for the Phillies. couple other young relievers in Jackson Peavy, guy who could also start in a pinch. Alejandro de la Cruz. I'm basically just looking, as you can tell, at the guys with the most potential according to our scout. But there's lots of other interesting options out there. Some catchers as well. Randy Soto, don't love his defense, but would certainly be a better backup bat. And then I know one of the other teams, there was a catcher that I was wanting to look at, Jesus Galiz from the Dodgers. He could be an interesting option. He's not quite as good defensively as Boone, but he's still an above-average defensive catcher. Certainly would think he would be better offensively than Boone, although not a big-time offensive player. But essentially, what we found out here is that Arguelles has some value if we wanted to potentially move on from him. The other guy that I'm going to check is the former first-round pick Trent Clausen. I think there would be some value there as well. Whether it will be higher or lower than Arguelles, we'll find out. Different reliever from the Orioles, Luis Burgos, right-hander. Oh, he was an international free agent signing. Was trying to figure out how he's not yet eligible for arbitration, but he was making $3.8 million. But that's because he signed a 2-year deal with them as a free agent. Sebastian Blanco, Elan Fernandez, who we talked about. Jackson Peavy, who we talked about. It looks like perhaps the market for Clausen is a little weaker than the market for Arguelles, but it does seem like we could probably put something together to bring some help for the bullpen on board, or maybe bring in a backup catcher or another infielder to put in the mix. There's definitely some options there for the likes of Arguelles and Blanco. So any thoughts from the worldwide scouting department on what you might do with the outfielders we could be looking to trade away? Would love some feedback on that. And then, as I mentioned, ultimately, before we start moving forward, we're probably going to want to make official decisions on the 3 players who we have team options on for this upcoming season. And those players, of course, are Luke Little and Drew Summers, the 2 left-handed relievers, and then Colt Keith, the potential third base / first baseman for us. So some interesting decisions ahead of us. Next time around, we'll talk about perhaps maybe a trade that we've made in the trade market. We'll also talk about the development lab and what we want to do there. Hopefully we'll start making some decisions as far as our coaching staff. You may remember that unfortunately we did just lose our scouting director as of today. That's probably actually a good thing to look at before I finish up this episode, because I know I just keep throwing more and more things at you, but that's a very important opening for us to have. So let's see who is potentially out there as far as scouts. And Justin Abbott, certainly at a high level, looks pretty interesting. 51 years old. I don't... it does seem like with the changes that OOTP made, that the dynamics between highly favor tools scouts and highly favor ability scouts are different in this version of the game. I think I still lean towards a highly favored tools scout, but it definitely seems like there's some gaps with those scouts in this game where they keep seeing potential in guys in their mid to late 20s that just really isn't there or really isn't realized. But I kind of use scouting as a goal of finding guys with big time potential. And I still think that a highly favored tools guy is going to perhaps identify more of those potential diamonds in the rough. And honestly, a guy who's outstanding at everything. I mean, I don't know how much we really need to care about the personality traits with the scout, but I'll look at those offline. But I really honestly don't, other than the massive contract that he's going to be looking for, given that we just lost a scout that we really liked. Can't really hope for a better looking profile than what Justin Abbott has on the market. So my hunch is that we would look to get him locked up in relatively short order, particularly because we're going to need an effective scout to accomplish what we want to with this team, which ultimately is going to be a successful offseason, hopefully bringing on some bullpen help, and ultimately focusing more on the trade market and the Rule 5 draft than free agency to hopefully position this team for a more successful run in the playoffs in 2033 than we had this past season. So a lot of decisions that we need to make. If you've got any thoughts and ideas, always helpful for me to hear them. And until our next episode, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.